Hello, my name is Sean, and we're going to do socially awkward blogs, which you can tell it's already off to a good start here. Already plenty socially awkward. So, it's kind of like giving a group presentation at this point. This is my first time really blogging. So, anyways, the topic I was asked to discuss today is how autism impacts my daily life. For those who don't know, I do have a form of autism known as Asperger's syndrome. It's a high functioning form of autism. And I was just startled by the cat scratching at the door, but I don't want the cat to come in during the blog, so we'll just kind of put that off. So, anyways, in terms of how it impacts my daily life, probably the most obvious reason is what you can see right now. I'm awkward until you get to know me. Once you do get to know me, I don't shut up. But until you get to know me, I can be a little bit socially awkward. So probably that's the main part about autism is that it impacts your ability to socialize. It impacts your ability to understand what others feel, the emotions they feel, and their feelings in general. You might not be able to as easily relate to the situation they're going through if you haven't been through it yourself. So I would say that kind of sympathy and empathy can be, not always. It's something that I learned throughout the course of my life. I developed over time. One of the ways I developed empathy, or even sympathy to a degree, I was asked to shovel the driveway for she's about 90 years old, elderly lady. So helping that old lady and forming a strong bond with her, that taught me a great deal about empathy. And I enjoyed my relationship with her. I still talk to her. I would just sit and she invited me in her home, and she was this neighbor was across the street from when I lived with my father. So I was just asked to go help her, and then it became a friendship. We would watch television shows together, and we'd have tea and cookies. So we just, did basic activities together. I spent time with her and continued to help her. So, and even to this day, I don't live with my father anymore. I'm out on my own, but I still keep in contact with that neighbor. So, empathy, sympathy, the ability to sympathize with others, those can kind of take a little more effort for someone with autism. Socially, I have the ability to, I feel like one-on-one, I can talk to anybody. That's not the case for people with more severe forms of autism. It just depends on the person. And even my one-on-one interaction, I had to really work on that. Part of what helped that, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. So that helped me develop my people skills, where now I feel like one-on-one I can talk to anybody. And, I've even worked retail jobs where I was commended for my customer service. So, I developed people skills. I would say that the more people you add, though, as you get closer to a group, maybe even you add a third person, it's more difficult for me to keep track of the conversation. You add more than an extra person, once you get more than 3 people, I can no longer attend to the conversation. There's too many, oftentimes there's too many conversations. It's like an auditory overload, which if there's too I'm kind of struggling with my words here. There's too much noise all at once. Auditory overload, an autistic person can become stressed out. That could be people talking. That could be loud noises like large groups. Like if you're at a cafeteria in the school, like how some of you might be able to hear distinct words from conversations. To me, it's just, jumbled noise. It's just like white noise. That's someone with autism. To them, it's just white noise, jumbled noise. They're not making out any words. It's just noise. So yeah, that's what auditory overload essentially is. Um, so yeah, it's just noise to us, and it's hard to attend to a conversation when it's more than one-on-one, or the more people you add, the more of a struggle it is. Loud, harsh noises in general are harder on someone with autism, like nails on a chalkboard. Is what comes to mind. Even like car horns, just sudden loud noises. We can become overstimulated. And speaking of stimulated, stimming is another thing common with someone with autism. My stim is that I flap my hands. I can kind of show you this hand. I kind of flap it inwards like a bird. Now, right now, I was consciously aware I did that. Someone with autism might do that and not be fully aware they're doing it until maybe someone's looking at them, and then you catch yourself like, oh crap, I did it. I better just stop. So that's an example of stimming. Other people have different forms of stimming, like maybe rocking back and forth. That's a common stim. Autism's different. I mean, it kind of varies person to person. So each person has their own unique set of challenges from it. In terms of the biggest challenges of my daily life, now I've held when I worked at Meyer, I had that job for probably about 3.5 years. So I can hold a job once I get one, but in terms of obtaining a job, that can be difficult for someone with autism. I can be a good interviewee, but I think there's just something that we do that kind of might put off the interviewer a little bit. I feel like I kind of do get labeled a little bit. It's harder to get a job, and it's harder to get respect once you do get a job, because some people, like your friends, might say, wow, that's a step up for you. You're making good money for someone with autism. And then, someone like, in my head, it's like, what do you mean for someone with autism? Why does that have to be included? Why can't it just be good money for anybody? But my teeth, if I don't do my routine the way I'm used to doing, if my routine gets thrown off, maybe I have to hurry up and get out of bed. I don't have time to shower because I'm running late for work. I better, start hauling it because I got 10 minutes to make it to work. Well, that's something that, and this is probably common for normal people too, well, I think normal people is the wrong word. There's no such thing as normal, but you know what I mean. Even someone without autism, that can throw off my entire day. Like if my routine is off, if I do something a little bit different, I can be thrown for a loop that day, and maybe even my mood will shift, or I just will have some brain farts, and it's a struggle that day, and eventually you either right the ship or it's just a rough day, and that's how it goes when you're routine based. I'm very particular about other things like cheeseburgers. Now, this doesn't seem like a big to do, but I don't like condiments. I think as a little kid, I didn't like condiments because they were messy, made my hands messy, and I still don't like them to this day. So I will order my cheeseburgers plain every time. When I go to a restaurant, if I order there and I really like something, I might, every time I go to that restaurant, order the same thing. Like every time I go to McDonald's, it's going to be 2 triples plain. And that's every time. I don't mix it up at all. Again, it's routine based. I'm going to get my 2 triples every time, That's just the way it is. But that's even a food routine that I don't break. Learning. So, I would say I operate like a computer. Once I learn a skill like a computer, I don't forget that skill, and sometimes I even become the best at performing that skill, such as when I play football. I throw the ball really well. It's something I've perfected. I've done since I was a little kid, and I would say it's like my hidden talent. People with autism often have a hidden talent, something they're really, really good at, that they naturally excel at. It comes natural to them. There are stories of people with autism. They play a piano for the first time and they're great at it. They can instantly, play songs on the piano and just, it's incredible. Now, I'm not somebody that has the instrument talent. Mine was more athletics and sports. And obviously, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, but the weather, I was really good at predicting the weather, and I was really interested in it. So there's often hidden talents, things that autistic people excel at. You'll even see, like, to keep the topic on athletics, what I'm good at. You'll see stories on the news, not involving me. I wasn't ever on the news. I only could have wished, but I was really good at football in my day. But again, I didn't make the news. But you'll see, like, they'll put an autistic kid off the bench in a high school basketball game, and he'll just come in and start sinking threes. We have pretty good muscle memory, so if that kid was in the same spot, I don't remember seeing the clip. I remember hearing the stories, but like if you get an autistic kid, like, and you give him that corner three and you don't contest it, and he can use the same muscle memory over and over, that's an advantage we can have. Some disadvantages for me, it's hands tasks. So I was never good at tying. It took me until high school to learn how to properly tie shoes. I can tie my shoe now, but even now, sometimes it's an adventure. I get them tied, and that's the bottom line. I get the job done, but tying is not something I excel at. I'm not the best with certain hands tasks. Obviously, like catching a football, I'm great at that. That's technically a hands task, and for whatever reason, I'm still good at catching a football. I would say it's like fine motor skills. So like when I worked at Meyer, things I struggled with were like tying the latex balloons for customers. And eventually I did learn how to do it, and then it became like clockwork, the balloons at least. So it's something that I really, really struggled with, and then I had a breakthrough and could do it all of a sudden. And the other thing I struggled with was tying the fish bags when I got the live fish into the bag, having a rubber band the bag shut. But those are examples of hands tasks that, I struggle with. And even some tasks like tying the fish bag, I eventually can do it, but it's really, really difficult. And in a pressure situation, like maybe the customer's impatient, I'm not going to be able to get it done. I might have to, sometimes I had to call somebody to help me or maybe the customer just angrily did it themselves because I just couldn't get it done under pressure. Now, some customers were more patient with me and gave me a chance, and I was able to figure it out. But that's just a task that has always been hard for me and likely always will be, tying. And so sometimes we lack motor skills, the fine motor skills. But, and here's how the breakthrough happens. Oftentimes somebody will painstakingly show me, like with their hands and their instruction, here's how you do it. And they could beat it into my head for weeks, sometimes months. And I will never do it. And then sometimes I just wake up randomly and, after months of having it beat into my brain, without that person there that's been instructing me, I just have a breakthrough and do it. I just try it with some random customer. Maybe I worked at 8 a.m. Again, I'm talking about my Meyer days here, and my supervisor's not there, and I just randomly, what? I'm not going to ask the customer for help tying this balloon. Let me see if I can do it. And sometimes I just randomly catch on, and there's really no explanation for it, because when my supervisor's standing there for months, or maybe somebody else, or even the customers, because my supervisor didn't go with me every time I went to the balloons, but it's been drilled into me for months, and people are standing right there, and I'm not yet getting it. And then randomly, without asking for help, or the customer I'm dealing with knowing this is something I struggle with because I don't announce it, I just do it. And oftentimes I don't hide my emotions. I then share with the customer, I haven't really ever done this before. This is the first time I've done this successfully, and sometimes that customer will share in my joy. So I don't hide that once I accomplish it. So yeah, random breakthroughs, but overall, oftentimes some hands tests I will just always struggle with it. Um, Driving is another skill that relies on motor skills from my perspective. I have never had my license. I have had my learner's permit because I can pass the exam. I'm 2 for 2 on passing the exam. So I know the laws of the road. I know the concepts of driving, but actually conducting the act of driving has presented a different challenge. I've been unable to do it. Some of that is just my motor skills. Some of that is I'm a poor multitasker. So, why can't it just be good money for anybody? But, so they kind of don't realize it. They're kind of putting you down in a way. And, obviously, I don't like comparing money. It's kind of a foolish thing to do. I think personally, if you're surviving, you should be happy with that. If you have enough money to survive, that's the name of the game as an adult. Are your bills paid? Or, are you going to be able to make it tomorrow? That's the important part, not how much money your friends are making. That being said, my friends are making sometimes twice or 3 times what I make, and just that's why that kind of comment, it kind of stings a little. It's not that I want the money that they have necessarily. It's just, it almost feels like a glass ceiling in a way, like I'm being held back from if I wanted to do something better, I'm doubted. Which I think I've dealt with that better over time, with my mindset of am I surviving? Do I have enough to pay my bills? And if the answer is yes, then I don't worry too much about it. I don't compare money with other people. I just worry about if I'm getting by. So in terms of like daily life, getting a job can be harder for someone with autism. I've been able to maintain a job before and get jobs, so it's not impossible. It's more difficult. Um, So certainly that's one of the challenges, just more difficult. Misconceptions is another daily struggle. Someone might look at me, and this is common because when you get used to me, you don't see me as socially inept. I'm often the funny guy. I make people laugh. I'm very comfortable, and someone might look at me and say, "Wow, you don't look like someone with autism." And well, autism doesn't exactly have a face. Um, I don't think someone necessarily looks autistic. Um, I don't think people mean offense with that comment. Usually, sometimes maybe they do, but to say somebody doesn't look like they have autism is kind of. I don't think you entirely understand the condition, to be fair. But yeah, that's a common one I get. When I tell somebody I have autism, they say, "Wow, you don't look like you have autism." It's like, thanks, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't really have a face. Um, so I'm not entirely sure what that comment means, but in a way, it's a put down. But people don't realize it, so I usually just move on. I don't make a big deal about it. So I've covered socially, auditory overload and all that, how that's a challenge. Kind of dipping more into socially. So I can talk to anybody one-on-one and be comfortable. Now, this is not common all the time with autism. I've just, learned to do that. You won't get other people with autism that necessarily communicate as well as I do. Doesn't mean I don't have it. Obviously, I've shared that I have the stimming and some of the other difficulties I go through. But like socially, okay. Another thing, facial expressions. I don't read them well. That's also common with autism. Someone could look very angry and I'm telling jokes that I think are funny, and maybe this person does not find the joke funny at all. I don't always take the clue. I can't look at that person, their face, and tell they're angry with my joke, because sometimes it goes a step too far, and I offend the person, and I wasn't trying to. I was trying to make everybody laugh. But, that's an example of autism. I didn't read their face. I don't take the social cue. Some people know when enough is enough, and maybe I'm in a really good mood, nobody else is that day, and I don't take the cue. I just keep going, and, sometimes that's a little obnoxious. I think I've gotten better at that personally. I'm just kind of, at recognizing when enough is enough, or at the very least, I've been through, I've made that mistake enough times that I learned that even if I'm not reading the cue, when you make a mistake enough times, you eventually learn from it. So yeah, facial expressions, social cues. In terms of socializing in general, I'm not a person with many friends. I can talk to anybody, I can make anybody laugh, I'm not necessarily uncomfortable around people, but I'm not somebody that, texts a lot of people. I don't have a lot of people over. This was even before COVID-19. So they defined it earlier this year as quarantine. Well, I found out that's basically my daily life. When I'm not at work, I'm not around people. Sometimes I want to be around people, so that's not always by choice. I'm just, that's a part of me, the autism, or for whatever reason, I'm just not comfortable going the next step in a friendship. Like, I guess I'm fine talking to people and communicating to people, greeting and, small talk at work, or even, making people laugh, even talking about controversial topics. I can do that. But when it comes to, hey, would you like to hang out, or would you like to do this or that, insert fun activity here, I don't always do that, I don't always reach out like that. I guess that's the part of socialization that I need to work on more, and that I'm still uncomfortable with. So, yeah, overall, someone with autism, like where I'm at right now, a lack of a network, that's pretty common. Again, it varies from person to person. Autism is essentially a developmental learning and social disorder. In terms of learning, things that might be hard, again, varies person to person. Like, people with autism have unique strengths. They have things they're really, really good at, or topics they're really, really interested in. Like, for me, I was always interested in the weather or football. Now, the problem with someone with autism sometimes, and it's not always a problem, but for others around them it can be, someone that's really, really interested, that has autism, in football, they might only talk about football sometimes because they're really, really interested in it, and they're not as interested in other topics. So they might just exclusively talk about their interests. Maybe a little bit too much, beat a dead horse with it. They might, when during the course of a conversation, maybe it's something that they don't know a lot about, or they're not interested in. They might switch the topic back to what they're interested in. So autistic people tends to be a one-sided conversation sometimes, and they dominate the conversation. Again, this is something I've gotten better at over time, avoiding dominating the conversation and actually listening to other people. Another tactic someone with autism might use, people are talking about things that don't interest them, or things they don't know a lot about. They might just tune out the conversation completely and just not talk at all, and just kind of zone out. That's another social thing they do. Another thing, about me in particular, I'm very routine oriented. Someone with autism, they often want to do things a certain way. Like, when I get up, I want to take a shower, and put on my deodorant, and brush my teeth. If I don't do my routine the way I'm used to doing. If my routine gets thrown off, maybe I have to hurry up and get out of bed. I don't have time to shower because I'm running late for work. I better, start hauling it because I got 10 minutes to make it to work. Well, that's something that, and this is probably common for normal people too, well, I think normal people's never had my license. I have had my learner's permit because I can pass the exam. I'm 2 for 2 on passing the exam. So I know the laws of the road. I know the concepts of driving, but actually conducting the act of driving has presented a different challenge. I've been unable to do it. Some of that is just my motor skills. Some of that is I'm a poor multitasker. So I can't attend to more than one task at a time sometimes. And there's actually, you might not think so because driving might be an easy thing for you to do. But when you actually take into account everything you have to have in your brain while you're driving, you have to be aware of the road signs. You have to be aware of other drivers. You have to be aware of what you're doing. You have to be able to predict a lot of things, including elements, other drivers, yourself. There's a lot of things that go into when you're driving, and I haven't been able to put it all together. There's a visual aspect I struggle with. I don't visualize the road right. It's someone with autism. It's called visual spatial vision. I can have tunnel vision, so to speak, meaning, maybe I'm looking straight ahead and I just, can't see what the other drivers are doing. And the way I'm describing it, you might think, well, Sean, that's, I deal with that too, and I have my license and drive. It's hard to describe, really, but there's something visually that I struggle with, that if I were to drive, I'm putting, obviously, my life at risk because, I'm probably going to wreck that car, and I'm putting other drivers' lives at risk, not intentionally, but because, I'm not aware enough as a driver, and, that's how people get hurt or even killed. And not to mention, I am not made of money. If you get in an accident, your insurance rate goes up. My brother likes to point out, well, I have a friend that's autistic like you and he drives. Well, again, autism varies from person to person, so my struggles are not the same as his. And I won't mention who the person is, but that person's family has quite a bit of money. So, and he's gotten in quite a few accidents. Now, they've been minor fender benders, but minor fender benders, your insurance rate skyrockets after enough of them, and he's had plenty of them. His family has the money to, keep just, throwing the money at it. I don't, I own my home, and that helps save me a lot of money. Technically, like if I go through a stretch of unemployment, even if I don't get paid unemployment, I'm typically fine because we own this home, and you'd be surprised how much longer money lasts in a house when you own it as opposed to if you rent the house. So, it's been a lifesaver to own my house because then, even if I just get a basic job, it could be retail or fast food, I'm really making enough money to survive. So, but back to the topic on hand, I'm more likely to lose my job in a chaotic situation. I lost my job this year at Meyer. Again, I worked there 3.5 years. So overall, I was fairly happy there. Again, I was known for customer service. But the pandemic hit. I have never, obviously nobody has experienced anything like this, states shutting down and what have you. That situation, I think I probably reacted with more anxiety than the average person. And it cost me my job. And I actually, for all intensive purposes, liked the job. I convinced myself that I didn't, because I didn't want to put myself in that environment during the pandemic. And that's something where there's not a lot of help for that. The state doesn't really care. The federal government doesn't really care because they stopped giving SSI for people with autism. So, meaning if you're freaked out about the pandemic and you lose your job, that's too bad. There's a lot of misunderstanding with that. But I can't exactly cry about it. I just gotta dust myself up and move on. I did get unemployment from the Meyer job, but then I got a new job. I was working at a factory. I worked there for almost 3 months, not quite, a little over 2, and I was shown the door. I won't get into specifics. I don't think I'm really allowed to. But, it was a character situation. I did get sick. I had the flu or something similar to the flu. I was tested for COVID-19. It came back negative, so I did not have COVID-19, but I went on COVID leave and then all that, that confusion. Those are situations I don't always handle the best, and there are some other factors that I can't get into, but, just that's an example of when chaos happens. Someone like me can be more vulnerable than the normal person, and it's not always that I respond with aggression I used to when I was a kid. That's another thing. Autistic people can, not always, again, it varies, but they can be aggressive, often over misunderstandings, where they didn't understand something and maybe the other person involved didn't understand it either, and you just get an ugly situation over really something that's preventable. Even when someone with autism is not aggressive, you do get preventable misunderstandings quite a bit. There's quite a bit of people, like, maybe they don't understand auditory overload, why the cafeteria is such a big deal for them, and you get misunderstandings off of that. So I think I covered just about everything, from what I go through on a daily basis with, socially, the stimming, learning, I talked about the different kinds of stems, how people perceive you, well, that's good money for someone with autism, just casual comments that kind of demonstrate there is a glass ceiling. But really, even if there is a glass ceiling, if you just kind of learn to put those comments aside and worry about your own survival and not what other people think of you. I mean, obviously, I would rather be liked than disliked, but if I am disliked, I can't put too much weight on that. I just gotta, worry about survival. So you just gotta learn to put some of those comments aside. But so I think really my daily struggle with autism is a lot of it is just misunderstandings with other people that I can do better at preventing. And, if I communicate better, I'm not the best communicator, but I'm getting better. And other people, if I inform them or, other people, that reduces the risk for misunderstanding as well. So I'm going to wrap up this blog for now about, daily struggles with autism. So again, my name is Sean, and obviously those of you on Facebook that I'm going to post this to know that, but I'm also going to post this on YouTube. So I encourage in the comment section, if you have any questions or just want to comment in general, I welcome you to share your comments with me, and any questions, I will answer them in the comment section. So thank you.